So I want to remind folks that are here, and we're going to start in a minute, that the bios and these wonderful headshots are all in the program as a way to know who our former interns are. And people will start coming up. And what we've been doing by way of introduction, and I'm telling our 4 guests tonight who are part of the extended CBST family, is that for the 12 months of the year of CBST's 50th anniversary, each month we explore a different chapter of Ayelet Cohen's book. Luckily for us, she had a book with 12 chapters. It makes it so convenient. So convenient. Oh, and you've got the book right there. And so this is our 5th month and the 5th chapter. And so each month we've picked out something from the chapter to explore. We can't do everything, of course. And the structure is pretty simple. And then we're preserving all of these videos, and we'll have 12 of these videos that explore a different aspect of our history. And one theme that we've tried to do is to make it intergenerational, to be really thinking that the people in the book might be from, obviously, an earlier generation, but try to have the newer generation as part of the conversation. So we're going to have Rabbi Yael Werber, who was also both a former intern and now a current assistant rabbi. And I are going to ask some questions of the 4 of you who are joining us via Zoom. And I'm really grateful to all of you for doing that. And you know, you don't want me to be upset with you because you don't know what'll show up in the mail. Anyway, so here we are. And then after we ask some questions and you guys have things on your mind to share and participate in a conversation with each other and with us, we'll then open up to the audience, to our congregation, as we've done each of these times. So if you have questions, just let us go through a little bit first, and then we'll open it up. Okay, sound good, everybody? Right. Well, I'm so happy. This is very exciting to me because I feel very, very connected to all of our former interns. And we have an intern alumni association here at CBST. And Roderick Young I've just made him the president.
Ilana looks a little upset.
You know,
she's
Ilana,
director of student
Ilana,
life.
you're the treasurer.
Yeah.
You're the vice president in charge of programming.
Yeah, charge of
and
programming.
I have to say, David Bauer, this has to be my most greatest line in a bio that I've ever read. His last line in his bio, he says he directed opera around the USA, Europe, and Israel, and in 1997 to 98 made his mark as the worst stage manager in Metropolitan Opera history. Anyway, we're going to start now with Rabbi Werber asking the first question.
Great. It's great to see you all, even on Zoom. It's really great to see your faces. So, we heard a beautiful drash from our current Cooperberg Master Rabbinical Intern, Eliza Schwartz, about the value of the internship and how much she is swimming in the amount of learning that she's been able to do. And we thought by way of introduction, it would be nice if each of you could share one thing that you took away from the internship, one piece of learning that you gained from your year or years as an intern, that you're taking away and have held on to as a piece of learning from the internship. And as we go through, we'll try to go in chronological order. Just say when you were an intern and a little bit about yourself so that the people in the room can get a picture of where you are now. So I think we're starting with Roderick, who was the earliest intern who was on this call.
So if I think about, well, first of all, it's just so fabulous to be here. I mean, it really is. Wish I could be there with you in person. I'm sitting in Norfolk in the east of England. If I think about one of the great, so many things I took away from CBST, I mean, really so many things. But one was, as Rabbi Kleinbaum knows, I like to be chronically prepared. You know, I like to start preparing things about, 5 years in before I actually do a service or something. Rabbi Kleinbaum is not quite like that. And so one of the great things I learned, I had to learn to be a little bit more spontaneous, to be able to act on my feet. And I'll just tell you one quick story. I remember in my second internship, with Rabbi Edie Mencher, who was the intern with me. We went to a Shiva minyan somewhere in Riverside, and it was the parent of a CBST member had died, and the family was very Orthodox, for a lot of black hat people there, and Rabbi Gordon Tucker from JTS was davening, was praying the mincha service, and there was like 100 black hat men in the room, and at the end of the mincha service, the afternoon service, he announces, I need to leave now to go to another Shiva minyan. So my colleague, whom I can see at the back, rabbinical intern Roderick Young, will now lead you in Mariv. And he left the room. And I am like, a rabbinical student, I am in complete terror. Later, Edie said to me, if it had been her, she would have had no recourse but to go, oh, and having a heart attack and drop to the ground. So, I just had to do it. I had to lead. And I think that's one of the great things this internship did for me. It allowed me to be a bit more spontaneous.
Thank you, Roderick. That was perfect. Perfect. You want to just share what years you were an intern and what you're sort of doing now in the world also?
I have to look it up in ILX. Rabbi Cohen's book. I was 96 to 97. And then 97 to 98, I stayed on teaching. And then I was intern again, 98 to 99, and then assistant rabbi for 3 years after that. I'm now a freelance rabbi, so I do, weddings, teachings, and bar mitzvahs, decided to give up the pulpit. And so now I do what I want when I want to do it, which is very nice. And that's good. And let me just show you, this was from my first internship. This is what CBST presented me from my first internship. It's all nicely engraved.
Ilana Friedman, do not say anything. Ilana Friedman, you are not allowed to say anything. Go ahead, Roderick, keep talking.
Well, I don't know, Ilana, but I'm still bitter that I didn't get a nice engraved one for my second internship. Still owed one.
Thank you. So I think that brings us to Rabbi Michael Copeland, yes? So Michael,
I think I think that's probably true, since Rabbi Young was my supervisor. So by the time that you were an assistant rabbi there, that was when I was an intern and Rabbi Kleinbaum was on sabbatical. You were wonderful. I love being your supervisee. So I was there from 99 to 2000, which is easy to remember because it ended with me becoming a rabbi. So I had that great experience of the last time that I was there for Shabbat, that it had all year, that little sign that said that I was an intern, and then it said I was a rabbi on the last day that I was there, which was just the biggest thrill in the world. So I learned so much from this internship. One thing that I learned that was very big was that I did not hate congregational work. I went into rabbinical school thinking it was the last thing I would ever do. And I was very set that I would do Hillel campus work, which I did do for the 11 or so years after I graduated. But it stuck in my head because I loved it so much that I would go and try to be a congregational rabbi only if it could be a place like CBST. So that's where I am. So I'm now at Congregation Shar Zahav in San Francisco, the sibling community out here, LGBTQ synagogue. And I got my wish. That's where I travel an hour to get here from my house because, and I don't know how many synagogues I passed on the way, because this was the synagogue work that I wanted to do. And I learned that at CBST.
I resonate deeply with that statement. Thank you. And so traveling through chronologically, I think it brings us to Rabbi David Dunbauer.
Yeah. So I was there, I guess, right after Michael. I was there for 2000, 2001. My co-intern was Ayelet Cohen in her first year at CBST. So many things. So I'm going to pick up on Roderick's point about learning spontaneity. At sort of at gunpoint. And the but what I learned is you can be spontaneous and go with the moment. And what I learned at CBST, if you leave a paper trail afterwards, you can respond in the moment, whether you're prepared or not, but you need to leave a record of what you did for yourself or for somebody else as a point of reference. And honestly, I have taken CBST intern forms with me wherever I went. I took them with me when I was the rabbi for a number of years at the Jewish community of Amherst, and I recorded things as we did at CBST, and so I could keep files, and because you can't keep track of everything in your head, and especially if you're working spontaneously, it doesn't things don't come already with like a context and a framework, so it's just kind of a scattered experience. But if you write it down, you can build on it for the future. The story I just want to share, Ayala has probably forgiven me for this, but at the end of our year, we were each given a present by the different minyanim that we had been assigned to as rabbinical interns, and she was given the liberal minyan, and I went to the Masorti, I forget what we called it, the more traditional minyan. And at the end of the year, I think she got a gift certificate to Pottery Barn, and I got one to the leather store, the Noose. And she felt so cheated. But I love the fact that, where else but CBST can you be recognized for your rabbinic work and for like the particular aspects of your queer identity that wouldn't be, that you would have had to hide someplace else in the Jewish world.
Oh yeah, David, would you mind sharing what you're doing now as well?
Oh, I do a lot of things now. So I am in the parking lot of the prison where I work as a chaplain 3 days a week. I just led services inside. And I have to say that it's a maximum security men's prison. There are a finite number of Jews inside. There's an incalculable number of queer people inside. So I am as busy as the queer chaplain as I am as the Jewish chaplain. So I do that. I have a private counseling practice. I have a private bodywork practice. I teach. I write, and that's my life professionally.
Thank you, David, and special thanks for coming onto the Zoom immediately after finishing your work. So thanks so much. Rabbi Ilana Friedman, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, and it's so nice to be here with all of you. Thanks for everything. I was a Cooperberg Master Rabbinical intern in 2014 to 2015, so a few years later than the rest of y'all. Currently I'm the campus rabbi at Duke University, which is the Hillel, but we're also part of the university. So I serve as a Jewish chaplain and campus rabbi for Duke and all the Jewish community here. Today it's graduation weekend. So I just finished running our Jewish baccalaureate, which is in response to the baccalaureate that Duke holds, that we've held here at our center for the last 40 years. And in fact, this year, they just invited me to give the opening prayer at the baccalaureate, which happens in Duke's chapel, for the interfaith service in the chapel. Somewhat interfaith, let's put it that way. I was there, so it was interfaith. This is my 8th year here, and I've been here since leaving CBST. One thing that I learned, I learned pretty much everything during my year as an intern. But one of the big, and I learned similar things that y'all learned, especially the on your toes thing that Rabbi Young brought about. But one thing that I learned in particular is that you really don't know the impact that you will have in the work that you do. And I guess I sort of underestimated the power of my voice and of my teaching. And there were several times as an intern, you know, I'm just one of the interns, you know, and I felt like very, not meek, but, you know, Rabbi Kleinbaum, Rabbi Weiss, and my co-intern was Ruchi Sophia Matzkin-Rubenstein, who was there the year before me, had really great presence. And I just was like, hello, here I am, the other intern. And I remember I gave a drash that perhaps I didn't put a ton of thought into, perhaps, and maybe wrote it Friday at 3 or 4 o'clock quickly, very stressed out doing it, but nonetheless did it. And I gave the drash, and it was about, if I recall correctly, there was a big thing about this dress that was black and blue or gold and white, depending on it turns out your eyes and how you see things in the world. And I gave this drash about the dress and about how we see God and the divine and blah, 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 as you can all imagine. And, you know, I thought it was okay that I pulled it off. And the response from people at CBST was so moving afterwards. People were coming up to me and having these very deep theological, quick conversations that just blew me away, that what I had opened up in a drash really spoke to people. And I didn't feel like I had that power before, or that ability or skill set, and being pushed by the rabbis to sort of get my voice out there more was really impactful for me.
Wow.
And how is your family doing? You got any pictures? Michael, you too. Let's see the kid pictures. You got some pictures? So I did Ilana's wedding, which was she finished the internship. I did her wedding, and she graduated from rabbinical school and started a new job. That was all in 1 month. That was quite a...
I don't recommend that to anyone when people ask for advice. It was very moving, but I don't recommend it.
Yeah. Great. So I wanted to sort of elicit some stories as well. And this is, free for all. You can all answer. Only one of you can answer. Totally fine. But some of you started to allude to it. But I was very moved in the book by Rabbi Yella Cohen's story of starting the internship and receiving a call from Tasha, I believe on her very first day, that somebody was dying in the hospital and she had to go right away. And she had to, find something appropriate to wear to the hospital right in that moment, get there, the patient had passed and she had to, from AIDS, and she had to deal with the family and the partner who there was not necessarily an acknowledgement of one another. So I wanted to ask from you all, what was a moment or the moment that you sort of realized, oh wow, I'm working at CBST, not any synagogue? And I think this can also be a little bit about what I think I was hearing a little bit about how compared to your other rabbinical school colleagues, what they were doing versus what you were able to do at CBST here. But really any stories of that nature, and anyone is open to answer.
I have one. Roderick, were you jumping in?
No, Michael, go for it.
I was just thinking, because I reread what I wrote, that I was tasked with, during my internship, with trying to figure out what a school would look like, and didn't really realize until being kind of in the midst of that why and how that was so complicated, particularly at CBST. So that was my moment of oh, I'm at a place with a particular history and particular needs. And I wrote about the kind of pain that hearing from, especially people who not only didn't have the opportunities to have children when they came out, not only that, but being the pain within families especially in a Jewish family, that not having kids was that's that's the, okay, so you're gay, but it's about the kids. You can't have kids. If that was the focus of so much of the pain and energy. So the idea that we were going to have school and the kids are going to be running around and there was going to be kid noise when people had so many people had closed that off and said, okay, I can't have that. I won't have that. And this is my space to be with adults, and I'm resigned to that. So the idea that this was all going to change, and with new generations coming in that had opportunities to have kids, that the landscape was changing, and there was a lot of pain in that, and a lot of joy as we figured it out together, and the school developed in the years after, and expanded so much of what we could do and what the community could be, what it needed to be at that time.
Thank you.
I think one of the first times I realized that I was at a synagogue that was different from other synagogues was we used to get these phone calls, and they would be from call boxes in Williamsburg. And it would be young Hasidic men, usually men. And of course, they wouldn't speak to Rabbi Kleinbaum because they weren't going to speak to a woman. And so I can remember the first time, Tasha calling me and saying, you have to speak to this guy. And this young man comes on the phone and he wants to come and speak to a rabbi. And so I invite him to come down to Bethune Street. And a couple of hours later, this kid turns up, and it's very clear that he has just got changed somewhere very close to the synagogue into what he thinks of as modern clothes. So he's wearing like this ill-fitting pair of jeans and a jean jacket. But what really got me, I remember, was that he was wearing a baseball cap, and his payas, his side locks, he had tucked and forced under the cap and pulled it down. And I remember just being so sad, because here we were, a queer synagogue that was all about being who you are. And this young man couldn't be who he was. I mean, he couldn't be Hasidic and gay as far as he felt. And he said he'd come to speak to a rabbi and say that he was leaving the Jewish community altogether. And he said he had 5 younger sisters, and he told me that because he was gay and was leaving the community, they would never get married. And it was, so incredibly sad. And I remember trying to say to him, you don't have to leave the community. Look where you are. You're in the synagogue that celebrates, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, straight people, come here, or go to a conservative or reform synagogue. And he kind of just didn't get it. And I never saw him again. I don't know what happened to him. And I hope he found a joyful path in life. But that was an experience I don't think would have happened at any other synagogue. And that was the first of many meetings with men like that.
Wow. Thank you. Powerful.
I have kind of just a different story. Simply just when I understood the stature or the magnitude of what it meant to work at CBST or to be part of the team. The first drash I ever gave at CBST was Yom Kippur morning at the Javits Center. And I had been as a congregant to services at the Javits Center. And when you're in a seat and you're looking up at the bima, you are a congregant focused on the rabbi or the cantor in front of you. But when you are on the bima at Javits looking out, and to a congregation that is spread out over the expanse of a football field, and I could see the back row of the people who were listening to me, but I couldn't make out faces. There were 1,500 people in front of me, and so I guess the realization is that that's something that at CBST you get used to. If you're part of the rabbinic team, that what you say, it's kind of, I think, picking up on what Ilana said, like you have impact. It goes out to literally more people than you can imagine would be listening to you in any other context.
Thank you. Anyway, I also just want to, I'll just reiterate the second half of the question, which was if there was a moment where you sort of looked around and you thought that wow, and I'm much closer to being in school than you all are, so maybe it's a little bit more present for me, but there were certainly many moments where I looked around and saw my rabbinic school colleagues dealing in their internships with so much less in some ways than what I was getting the privilege to be responsible for here. And I just wonder if any of you want to share a little bit of what that maybe looked like or felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I can share, and just that, I mean, immediately in the internship, you're thrown in and given, you know, at the time, a file folder. I think now it sounds like it's on Google Docs. Sorry, Sharon. Rabbi
I know they're just ripping they're ripping all the paper out of my fingers. Can you believe that?
My condolences.
It's yes.
And you know, I remember, you know, we start the internship in the fall and it's high holidays, and you know, my classmates were, you know, maybe working a high holiday job if they had one, maybe not, and we were super involved in high holidays. And I just remember Erev Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Kleinbaum sent me to, it was like a former congregant, I think it wasn't a current congregant, who was in a coma and was dying in the hospital. And I had to go to the hospital and meet with his mom and him and do a pastoral visit. And it was like, again, maybe a couple hours before Rosh Hashanah started. I was ready this time. I had my drashot prepared. But it was unbelievably difficult of a visit because this young man was dying, and also his mother was really in a bad situation and had a bad encounter with a rabbi who visited her the previous day in the hospital, not one of our clergy, obviously. And I had to sort of mend that experience and sit with her and be with her as her son lay dying in a coma. And then an hour later, I had to be, you know, at the Javits Center, ready to rock for Erev Rosh Hashanah. And I'll never forget that Rabbi Kleinbaum, Rabbi Weiss, and Ruchi and I sat together for a few moments, and we did like a transition moment. And I think it was for me. I don't know if it was for everyone else. I don't think this was like a regular thing to sort of push me out of that space that I was just in and into a new space. And it was a really powerful, holy moment to me. And none of my classmates were having those kind of experiences. I mean, sure, some of them were doing chaplaincy internships, but not at the level that CBST has you deal with.
Also, we have our two current interns in the back. If you guys want to participate or say something or ask questions, Adam and Eliza are here. Adam's from HUC and Eliza's from RRC. Please feel free to participate, either to respond or to ask questions. And I want to also point out that the internship covers so many different. You don't have to. You're not going to get them. They're under the balcony, Jason. So you know Jason's trying to find them with the camera, but they're way under the balcony. Is the different rabbinical schools that everybody comes from. So we have RRC, HUC, JTS, AJR, Maharat, and Hebrew College. So we have, this is also one of the unique experiences. And I'm going to ask a final question before we go and open it up to the congregation. One of the things that Eliza talked about in her drash tonight was the power of the co-intern relationship. And for some people, and we set it up that way, and it's very important to me that the interns see themselves as really going through this together and see each other as the first place to ask a question, to problem solve before coming to me or to the assistant rabbi, so that they see themselves as kind of a team. So I'm wondering, do any of you want to comment on your experience with a co-intern or what those relationships were like, or anything in your reflecting, either small or big, either funny or deep, or whatever you want to say about just that relationship with your co-intern? And maybe if in any of your cases, if your relationship has continued into your rabbinates down the road to the current moment. Just jump in, or else we'll call on you.
So I had two co-interns. My first one was now Rabbi Josh Lesser, and my second one, as I mentioned, is now Rabbi Edie Mencher. And I think Rabbi Kleinbaum will know that one of my favorite stories, because Josh Lesser and I, we did really very much, this was so new to us, and we did very much rely upon one another. And one particular man whom Josh was looking after was a wonderful character. I won't name him, but he was a wonderful, wonderful character. And he was larger than life. And sadly, he's no longer with us.
You're talking about Mark Janover?
I am, of course.
Okay, I'll name him. Mark Janover. We love Mark.
We love Mark. And so Rabbi Kleinbaum will probably remember this story, that I was in the office one day and Rabbi Kleinbaum wasn't there, and Josh came back and he was kind of looking shell-shocked. And he said to me, I've just been over to Mark's, and Mark was in a terrible, terrible state because he had lost a piece of jewelry that his late partner had given him. And he said to me, Josh, I think it's somewhere under the bed, and you have to go under the bed and you have to find this piece of jewelry. And so Josh crawled around under the bed, and Mark had not been so well, so he wasn't able to clean his apartment so well. And Josh came back and he said, I'm crawling around under the bed and it's full of like huge pieces of dust. And forgive me, I know it's Shabbat evening, but this is what he said. And there are sex toys under the bed. And there I am under the bed, surrounded by dust and sex toys. And suddenly I stop and I say to myself, would Rabbi Kleinbaum be doing this? and Josh and I sat and we talked about it and we processed it, and it was an important moment. What are the boundaries? And I think in my rabbinate, one of the most important things that I learned from Rabbi Kleinbaum is boundaries, and how we protect ourselves as rabbis, and how we're able to go on with the longevity in a job that Rabbi Kleinbaum has had. And that's really because of boundaries. If you just are unboundaried, you're not going to survive. So it's a great story, but it has an important moral, I think.
I think we've reached also you're a rabbi at CBST when then. Anyone else on the Zoom call?
I was a co-intern with Ruchi Sophia, and we were classmates at RRC, but we were not like tight before that. She was in a different year, then she switched to my year, and our year of interning together made us very, very close. In lots of different ways. We still are very close. And I think it's all because of that year that we interned together. It was a Shemitah year, so we have Shemitah names for each other. She's Shmuchi, in case you're wondering, and I'm Shmilana, or she called me for short Shmi, which none of you are allowed to ever call me that, just to be clear, it's not, but she's allowed, but only on Shemitah years. I feel like we were like in the trenches together, and I've seen other interns that I know who intern together at CBST have that dynamic, not all, but many. And we just shared every experience and everything we were going through together. And that was a big deal for us during that year.
So my co was Rachel Gardner, who was an RC student like me, and we were already close friends when we started. So it was just a total gift to get that time together. And I don't know what the setup is now. I mean, it's in a completely different place, so I'm sure it's not like this, but there isn't really even a wall between you. Like there wasn't space. So, you're like getting up the nerve to make a call that's hard, because, a lot of our job was to make really challenging pastoral calls to like people who weren't community members, like, Roderick was saying, like people call in from all over the place, like, okay, I'm ready for this call. And someone's listening to you, can hear every word you're saying from right there. And it just, we were able to really be in it together and totally support each other. The other thing that I think of when when I think of Rachel and I doing this together is that, you know, one of the first things you have to do in this internship is to come out whatever you are, which kind of mortified me. I had not really been out as a lesbian, mostly because my partner at the time was not my now partner, who at the time was not Jewish yet. And that did not go over well in the rabbinic world. So I had been kind of closeted for a lot of years and then came to CBST. I'm like, wow, I have to like really come out. So I was dealing with that. She had something that was much more challenging, you might say, which is that she had to come out as bi. And that I think had not happened before she got there. And so that was a big deal for her. So it's like, oh, you know, I got to get over myself. Like there's something very different about coming out as bi in a queer community. So we kind of supported each other through that as well. And we're still good friends. Just saw her recently in DC where she lives.
Rachel's the rabbi at Georgetown, right? Is that? I think Georgetown or American University, one of the DC. Somebody remember? We have it down in the
Georgetown.
list. It's Georgetown.
She's been at,
right.
Yeah.
My co-intern was Ayelet Cohen, and I felt
Do you wanna
totally
share any stories?
nothing that she would ever have to come after me for. So no, but I just want to share. It was, we were colleagues, mutually supportive, but I honestly, I recognized that I was in the presence of somebody extraordinary. Like we were both students, we were both interns, but as an intern, Ayelet Cohen was already Ayelet Cohen, and I'd never met and been close to a student who had her level of learning and kind of rootedness in Jewish culture and civilization. We were colleagues and starting together, but I was there like as a star was born.
So let's open it up to the congregation who's here in the room as well as Zoom, if anybody has any questions, either of specific people or of general ones. So Sharon, up there, you'll gather some questions and pass them to me, okay? And let's start. Shep. You need to use the microphones. You can face them.
Oh, yeah. So, what exactly, if you can quantify, what makes an internship, or even being a rabbi, so intense at CBST more than others? I mean, it's kind of, I'm honored. I've been here so long, but like, what is it really that's so intense?
So I think also.
So for the Zoom audience, Rick Landman just said, people like you, Shep.
I'm happy to share a small word and then hear what our wonderful panel has to say too. But and our current interns, yeah, actually, if you guys, yeah. But some of it is what has already been said, which is that in many other internships that I had before coming to CBST, my work was very siloed. Like maybe I would give a drash, or maybe I would lead services sometimes, or maybe I would prepare something for one of the holidays. But that was sort of the only thing I was doing that week, or whatever, however many hours I was coming to that internship. But at CBST, it was so the portfolio was so much bigger than that, in a way that I want to say I really appreciate, and I think I think that other folks would say the same. It's intense in a good way, in a way where I feel like, wow, the amount of learning that I got to do as an intern here was unparalleled to any amount of learning that I had done in the 3 previous internships I had before coming here. Not to say those weren't good, but that this one was on a different level. So that's just a piece of it, and I'm happy to have others answer too.
Adam, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I would say that at CBST, like as Jews, we're all operating in one level of being a minority in the world, and that's common throughout Jewish communities. But queer folks also have this extra layer of being double minority status. And then depending on gender and race. There could be multiple systems of oppression challenging somebody to exist as their authentic self day in and day out. And this really comes in when you think that you might be approaching somebody with one pastoral need, and then they might start talking about something that happened in childhood or 10 years ago that's completely out of left field, was not something that you were expecting to encounter. And that is something that comes up at CBST a lot more frequently than elsewhere. And I just wanted to add also we talked about the topic of school. I would say at CBST you have to be open and aware that families from birth to death and everything in between takes so many different forms. And at a synagogue that's mostly made up of heterosexual couples, there's usually two parents and children, and those parents have two parents, and that's not always the case at CBST.
And I'd say structurally, and this is something that the interns who also what Rabbi Werber's saying is true about what she found out from her school. Structurally, we set up the internship here very, very differently in that the interns are doing pastoral counseling. In most internships, the rabbinical students don't do pastoral counseling. And the structurally is very, very unusual. I remember I was at a meeting with other mentors when we have a JTS student, we have to participate. The clergy the mentors have to participate in a mentor program. And at HUC, if we have a reform student, like we have Adam this year, we participate in a mentor program that Rabbi Kim Geringer runs, who's also a CBST member, and Rabbi Nancy Weiner. And one thing that always is interesting to me is to listen to the other mentors talk about whether or not they can use their interns to do pastoral counseling. That is such a basic part of our internship. It's really probably 50 to 60% of the internship is doing pastoral counseling. So just structurally, that we let interns do it. And I once had a conservative rabbi say to me, I can't let my interns do any pastoral counseling because then congregants will develop relationships with them and not with me. And that is really a deep concern because they feel like the interns come in and out of the community. They want the congregants to all be connected to them only and not to other rabbinical. Kim, you agree with that? Is that yeah? So at CBSC that we've set it up from the beginning that the interns are really doing. Eliza was the prime person supporting Ron Cohen and his husband through Ron's illness and death, and will do the Shiva Minyan on Sunday night. There is no other internship in the world in which a rabbinical student would be doing that. For a longtime member, working with Ron in his illness, and then Joe as a mourner, and then actually doing the Shiva Minyan.
Yeah,
So that's an example structurally of what's really, really different. Do anybody on the screen want to respond to that, or?
I'll just say one other thing that's interesting is that compared to my other internships, the members of CBST take this internship really seriously and take the Cooperberg Master Rabbinical interns seriously. And, at other internships, people are coming and going, interns come and go, and it's just kind of the way it is. Where at CBST, it was like a big deal for both the congregants and the interns to interact with each other. Everybody sort of has a lot of pride, I would say, in who the interns are and want to get to know them. And it makes it's not a negative thing, it's a really good thing, but it makes it more intense, right? Everyone is so invested in you and wants to help you also grow and learn. So it's not just the rabbis being like, I'm going to show you how to do things, which, that happened too. But the congregants are so involved and invested in the internship too. Which
I don't believe in coddling the interns. I don't like to show them how to do anything. I think they should just drop them into the deep end, and we hire the kind of interns who swim very well.
Yeah.
So far, we haven't lost any. So yeah.
But what I'm saying is the congregants did the work, not Rabbi Kleinbaum.
Right. Exactly.
So thank you all.
That's also structural. And I want to say that really goes back to my original conversations with Bill Fern. We really had this idea that CBST would be like a teaching hospital for like for residents and attendings, that CBST is like a teaching hospital. And then the step beyond, we created this alumni association, which is very loose. But every 2 years now, we get together, and people are still in relationship with each other and still see this connection as being really important. Yes, another question, Michael Levine.
Oh, actually,
David Bauer. Oh, sorry, David Bauer. Sorry, Michael, hold on.
um, about being assigned the pastoral care portfolios. I remember from way back when that RSKU gave me one folder and told me to call these particular congregants, and I, as an intern, as a student, like you go into things kind of, I don't know, very, kind of ambitious. Like I am going to hear this. There's going to be a problem, and I'm going to solve it. And I was on the phone with these particular congregants for about an hour and a half, nonstop, and then eventually just had to hang up the phone. And I sort of like staggered into RSK's office, and I said, I explained the problem that these people had presented, and I said, and I couldn't help them. And RSK, you said to me, that's why I gave this to you. You said that I needed to learn that there would be things I couldn't solve. And like you kind of knew what I was going into, and I think, and you sort of expected me to come staggering in, but then you turned the light on and said, this is one of the things you have to learn as a pastoral counselor. And I say that in every context I've ever worked, and certainly here at the prison, to know that what I can do is listen, and to tell people I can listen, but I can't solve this. And takes, it makes it possible for me to work. But it was a profound moment that particular day.
Thank you, David. Michael Levine. Michael, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share a story relating to pastoral counseling and to Rabbi Young. The morning was 9/11. The Twin Towers had fallen. Lower Manhattan was full of smoke. My first inclination was to go to CBST. I know Rabbi Kleinbaum had to turn around and go back home in her car because the roads were being closed. I knew the subways were being closed. And I said to myself at that point, what if there's somebody who needs a place to go? I went to CBST, and there was only one person there. I found one person in the office, and it was Rabbi Young. And we sat there, and I said, why are you still here? Shouldn't you go home? We both live in Greenwich Village. He said, no, there might be someone who needs a rabbi to talk to. That's a memory that I will never forget, and that's part of the training that Rabbi Young received here at CBST. What if there's someone who needs to talk to a rabbi? And I believe, Rabbi Young, you stayed all day long in case there were people who needed to talk. That's something this congregation will always be grateful to you for, and for the many years you served as a Cooperberg Rittmaster Rabbinic intern, as a sabbatical rabbi, and as an assistant rabbi. You were a treasure to us, and you always had pastoral counseling on your mind. So on behalf of everyone, I thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi Young actually was in the mikveh that morning and did a conversion of a little baby before he came down to CBST with Tracy Nathan and Ayelet Cohen, right? Was that the Beit Din at the mikveh that morning on the Upper West Side?
That's right. Yes, and and then I walked downtown because there was no other way to get there, and not knowing what had happened at CBST. Michael, thank you so much for your words. They were really beautiful. Really beautiful. Thank you.
Any questions from Zoom, Sharon? Okay, so then Jerry.
Rabbi Friedman said that we congregants, and Michael framed it perfectly, have expectations. I've been a member a little more than 10 years, and the day I joined, my sister-in-law had just passed away, and my first phone call, within minutes, was from, he identified himself as Rabbi Ayalon, I forgot, Eliach from CBST. I was a brand new member. And he called me every single day for approximately 2 weeks. And I mean, it didn't mean I wasn't going to get to know Rabbi Kleinbaum better or others, but it was so touching. We as a congregant, I as a congregant, and I think many congregants would agree, we have very high expectations of our interns. As co-chair of the retreat, I fully expected our interns to be giving drashes and talking and doing things, running seminars. You're just part of the whole fabric of CBST. I never looked at you as interns. I always looked at you all as rabbis, period. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
The model that I use as the senior rabbi here is that the interns really function more like assistant rabbis, and the assistant rabbi really functions more like my co-rabbi. And the only thing different is that the interns are only paid for 15 hours a week. But in terms of what they do during those hours, absolutely in any other synagogue would be an assistant rabbi position. Eliza, did you want to say something? I know. And so some of the folks on the phone who have been able to be at the intern retreat know the current interns, except for you, Adam, because you got sick with COVID. But that's how they know each other.
Yeah, I think, thanks. I think what I'm going to say has basically already been said, but it feels worth like lifting up. But Ilana, what you said, and hi, I don't know where to look at the camera, but it's good. I feel like what you said, I just feel so grateful. I really do feel like we're being set up for success and set up to be taken seriously, like, which is what Ilana said about, like, it's like the way that the internship is talked about in the congregation is like, these are serious rabbis who can be taken seriously. So the trust is there. And if there's trust there, then it opens up so much opportunity to do big things. And so I really feel like I'm set up. I'm set up to be trusted. And then hopefully I can, fulfill that trust. But it's like it's a setup for success. So thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Rabbi Kleinbaum, I have a comment from Judy Hollander.
Comment from Judy Hollander. I'll repeat it so that
she
they can hear.
says, some of my most significant spiritual experiences have been with interns. One of them is here.
Judy Hollander saying some of my most significant spiritual experiences have been with interns. What was the second part? Some of whom?
One of them is here.
One of them is here.
But we don't know.
No,
But she's not going to tell us who.
She's not telling.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks, Judy.
Sharon. Did you have another question?
I could ask another question. Sure, I'm happy to. Well, the other piece of the chapter that really spoke to me, and this was your piece, David, actually, was when you wrote about being assigned to the Book of Blessings minyan, and how powerful that was, and it was. The truth is that this is out of genuine curiosity because. One of the things that I did in my internship year, and actually what our interns are doing now as well, is that we've been working in the Limud program, and so we have had a little less face time with the various minyanim. But I know that over the course of the internship, that hasn't been true. So I'd really love to hear from anybody on the panel, just to describe some of your prayer experiences at CBST and how they maybe challenged you or helped you learn and grow in other ways.
Let me speak briefly about that minyan. The Book of Blessings it's a prayer book, a contemporary prayer book written by poet Marcia Falk, poet, theologian, liturgist, and it's a feminist siddur, and this was a minyan that was run and attended actually only by women. And for, I think, the entirety of the year, I was the only male identified person in the room. and it was so for me, it was an introduction to like feminism in action, not just feminism as a a political something that had to be achieved, but the way that the minyan was sort of cooperatively led, and the freedom to pray using liturgy that was fresh, new, and based in tradition, but but emphatically wasn't trying to impress with its traditional sound and nature. It was so beautiful and so freeing, and I didn't understand that there could be regular, consistent, focused Jewish prayer that wasn't somehow adhering to the millennia old formulas for prayer and brachot. So it was glorious, and I just remember being there, showing up on like frozen February mornings, and just being so glad to be part of this group of 5 people who were there. It was beautiful.
I think that's significant also. Some of our most important groups are not big, and that's an important thing to remember. You can have a really deep movement either with one other person or with a small prayer group. It doesn't all have to be on a large scale. So I think we have to kind of wrap up for this evening. So do you have any closing comments? Our panel, we have somebody in San Francisco, so 3 hours earlier, somebody in England, so 5 hours later, and Duke is somewhere in the south. I can't remember where. Where is Duke exactly?
So just a few years behind.
So that's just a few years behind. Sorry, Ilana. Oops.
Sorry.
And David Bauer is in Philadelphia. But it's okay. We're happy you're there, Ilana, holding up the good fight.
Durham is a very progressive town. Thank you very much.
Yes, a very progressive town.
And people like me are needed around here too, because someone has to
More
try
needed.
to.
Of course you
Yeah.
are. Yeah. Don't worry, they're used to me, okay? They're used to me. The congregants are a little freaked out by, they're, okay. So do you guys have any thoughts you want to end with, or anything you want to say to the congregation or to the current interns, or?
Well, I mean, what I would just like to say is that I really do carry CBST wherever I go. On Sunday here in England, it's going to be Yom Masorti. So the Masorti, the conservative movement, is putting on a day of learning. And along with the queer programming counselor, I'm going to be doing some queer programming. And I will, of course, be talking about CBST, because it's one of the things that I always talk about as the bedrock of my queer Jewish identity. So CBST gets a lot of airtime here in the UK. And a big thank you for that. And I'll just finally end by saying I heard Rick Landman's name mentioned, because he said something about Shep. And of course, it's only at CBST. There is no other synagogue in the world where I'm sure I would have been dressed every Purim by Rick Landman as the Queen Mother. It wouldn't have happened anywhere else.
And he was always dressed as the Queen Mom, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that's so moving also is your own personal journey, Roderick, your Jewish journey, but also your journey from starting in a Masorti at JTS, but because of its policies on gay rabbinical students, you moved to HUC, and then you were ordained by HUC, but Roderick has just recently joined the conservative movement's
the Rabbinical Assembly.
The Rabbinical Association. So it's a pretty moving arc of your life.
Yeah, you know, HUC, the Reform Movement, gave me a wonderful home, and I still feel very at home there. But I've come back to where I began, in the conservative movement. Yeah,
it's pretty moving.
Thank you,
Michael. Any closing thoughts, or where you are, or what's on your mind you want to say to folks tonight as we end tonight's program?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm just remembering that before I started at CBST, I had been at a conservative-ish but not affiliated synagogue in New Jersey doing a little bit of work. I was just kind of filling in, and I was totally not out. Then CBST, like I said before, like it really boosted me in my coming out process. So that by the time that I graduated from CBST, they actually wanted to hire me back, but full time as an assistant rabbi. So by this point, I'm like, oh, I've got to come out to them. They had only known my partners, like, oh, your friend always comes. It's so sweet. Like they had no idea who she was. So I had to come out in my interview with the president that I, by this point, knew really well. Sweet man. But when I told him that I was a lesbian and that Kirsty was my partner, he kind of froze and it's like, I don't know what to do with that. So he kind of went to the board. He's like, I'm going to have to check that out. I'm like, whoa, like that's worse than I thought it was going to be. Went to the board. They wanted me and they brought me on, but it was a little bit shaky. So then I did about a year and a half or so there. And then I found out years later that when they went to affiliate with the conservative movement, this is before gay and lesbian students were admitted at the college still, they told the movement, apparently, hearsay, I don't know, that they would not join if they couldn't hire someone like me again. And that just blew me away. So the ripple effects of CBST in the larger world, like we don't even know what the effects are. They're so great.
Wow, that's so moving.
I want to say that when you're part of CBST, like that there's such a thing as CBST normal. There is something where like you get used to the rhythm, you get used to the community, you get used to the discourse. But when we as interns are, look where we all are. So I'm quite sure that queer students at Duke never knew that they could feel comfortable the way they can now. I'm sure that queer members of the royal family are probably really comforted by Roderick's sweet, sovereign maternal presence. And I can say that there are men in the prison that I'm looking at the prison right here. There are men who did not know that they could come to any kind of religious service or context, and they could be gay, they could be queer. So the internship changes us, and then we go out and we change institutions, we change the world. So from CBST, like the power of queer Judaism and the power of queer rabbinate and queer aware rabbinate, the impact is huge, is substantial, and glorious. So I'm very, very proud.
Thank you so much, David. Ilana?
I'll say two things. One is that I'm part of a few rabbinic associations, like, the Reconstructionist Rabbinic Association. I have my Hillel Rabbi cohort, the National Association of College Clergy, whatever. All that stuff is great, but there's no rabbinic cohort that I feel more connected to and feel the most that I get out of than the CBST CRI alumni network, of which I am the program officer. That, like, our retreats that we have every other year or so is the most gratifying and nourishing retreat that I have in all of my professional development. Maybe I need to pick some other things to do that's separate, but like, it is the best. And to be I don't know, like this part of this group, like it's not like we all call each other every day and are on like social media talking to each other, whatever people do, but I just know that this group is a group that I could reach out to, and people that are former alumni I could reach out to, and they would be there for me. And that's just really gratifying. And then the second thing I'll just say is that, I was an intern for a year, and my wife, Jamie, now like doesn't like any other synagogues. It's terrible. So you all ruined synagogues for us everywhere. And I'm not sure what to do about that, but each synagogue was just like, no, it's not CBST. So I'll see you later. I'm like, cool, so fun. So thanks for ruining all other Jewish experiences for my family.
Well, we counted today, and we've had 47 individuals who have been part of the Cooperberg Rittmaster Rabbinical Internship. Some of those 47 have been multiple years, but there have been 47 individuals, rabbinical students, and this is not even the cantorial program, this is our rabbinical student program, from every gender identity and sexual orientation, from every rabbinical school, except we haven't broken into REITs, which is Yeshiva University's rabbinical school yet, or YCT, but we have had the Orthodox women from Maharat at CBST, and Hadar, we forgot Hadar. We have had straight interns, we have a straight assistant rabbi, queer, gay, bisexual, transgender, women identified, male identified. We really have over the course of the arc of this program, which started in 1995, so that's how many years? I don't remember. 28 years with 47 different people who have gone into all different kinds of expressions of the rabbinate. And on this call, look, we have prison chaplaincy, writer and freelance, college and synagogue life, because we don't think there's one way to be a rabbi. And we don't think there's one way to serve the Jewish people, lead the Jewish people, and try and imagine a different future. And generationally, that program started in 1995. That is a long time ago. I'm not sure, because I can't do the math, but I think some of our current interns might not have even been born then. Were you born then? No. Our current intern, Adam, was not born when this internship began. And I don't say that to be, I'm not like into, I really, that's not denigrating the hefech. It's saying this is how powerful this is. And now Adam gets to be part of this alumni association when we graduate you. You're not there yet. But when you know, in another year and a half. And he gets to be part of this community with these 4 who are on the screen now and the so many more who aren't with us tonight. There's a really important sense of a chain, a link, and a community of rabbinical and cantorial. The cantorial former interns are also a part of it. And it's really part of creating this incredible thing called CBST, but not only here inside these walls. It goes way beyond. And my relationship with all of the people on this Zoom and the people in this room, there are not words to describe how I feel about you all and what you mean to me and what it's meant to me to be your mentor. And I am the only one who is part of our alumni association who has never been an intern. So I had to apply for a waiver.
There's an opening.
I had to apply for a waiver to be part of the group, although I've never been an intern. So I want to thank everybody who's here tonight, and we continue on this incredible, I just can't, having all of you here tonight, the 3 of you in the room here, to really help celebrate CBST's 50th anniversary. It's so deeply meaningful. Thank you all so much. Thank you, everybody.